What happens when a calm Hollywood icon finally snaps on live television? When Brad Pitt faces off against Sunny Hostin, the studio turns into a battlefield of pride, truth, and control. This isn't just a talk show gone wrong, it's a war between truth and reputation, between silence and survival. The studio lights burned hot and sharp, washing that made everything feel too real. The audience murmured, half excited, half uneasy, as Brad Pitt took his seat. He smiled politely, the kind of smile people give when they know all eyes are on them. Across the table, Sunny Hostin leaned in, calm and measured, the kind of calm that hides sharp edges. Sunny adjusted her notes, eyes locked on him. "Brad," she began, her voice smooth but with an edge, "you've always been seen as one of Hollywood's most composed figures. But do you ever think your silence might actually be part of the problem?" The question dropped like a stone into still water. Brad blinked once, twice, his smile faltering. He didn't speak right away. He looked at Sunny, then down at his hands as if weighing how honest he wanted to be on live television. Finally, he said, steady but clipped, "I think everyone decides for themselves how to speak and when. Sometimes silence isn't avoidance, it's restraint." Sunny tilted her head slightly, not breaking eye contact. "But when someone with your influence chooses restraint," she said, her voice cool, "doesn't that sound a lot like comfort?" A small gasp came from somewhere in the crowd. Brad's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. He gave a short, dry laugh, the kind that carries more warning than humor. "You make it sound like silence is a crime," he said quietly. "Maybe I just choose not to perform outrage for the cameras." Her lips curved, just barely. "Or maybe," Sunny replied, "you've just grown comfortable watching others take the hits." The words hung between them, sharp and cutting, like a spark in dry air. The audience held its breath. Brad's eyes hardened, the polite smile completely gone now. He leaned forward a little, his tone low but heavy. "You really came here to ask me that, huh?" he said. "Not about the work, not the film, just the part you think I'm hiding." Sunny didn't look away. "People just want to know," she said evenly, "if the Brad Pitt they see cares about what they care about." That's all. Brad's laugh this time was quieter, almost bitter. "You mean if I care loud enough?" The audience stirred again. The tension wasn't just in the air anymore. It was visible. His jaw moved as he pressed his lips together, his gaze dropping to the table for a moment before he looked up again. "Maybe you're right," he said. "Maybe I've been quiet too long. But maybe I'm just tired of everyone trying to make my voice theirs." Sunny's eyes narrowed, her tone cool but firm. "No one's asking you to give up your voice, Brad," she said. "They're asking why you only use it when it's convenient." The audience collectively exhaled, as if the words had physically landed. Brad's expression froze, a flicker of anger crossing his face before he smoothed it out again. "Convenient," he repeated under his breath. "That's one word for surviving this business." Sunny didn't blink. "And that's one word for ignoring the world outside of it." The light seemed to hum louder. Whoopi shifted in her seat, glancing between them. The air had turned electric. Two people smiling, but no one mistaking it for peace. Brad's voice stayed calm, but his eyes hardened just a little. "I believe sometimes people change things through action, not words," he said, almost like he was reminding himself as much as her. The room stayed quiet for half a second too long, and then Sunny leaned forward, her lips curving into a small, knowing smile. "Or maybe," she said softly, "you're just afraid your words might come back to bite you." That was the first cut. The sound of her tone, light but sharp, hit harder than if she'd raised her voice. The audience reacted instantly, a low "oh" rippling through the studio. Brad's smile froze for a beat before twisting into something tighter, something that didn't reach his eyes. He gave a short laugh, the kind that wasn't really a laugh at all. "Well," he said slowly, "if people came here hoping to see me slip up, I guess today's their lucky day." A few awkward chuckles broke out from the audience, but no one sounded sure if they should be laughing. The warmth that usually followed his charm was gone. The air thickened, like everyone could feel they'd crossed an invisible line. Brad shifted in his seat, the movement small but tense. He was still smiling, but his tone had dropped lower, firmer. You know, Sunny, he said, it's funny how easy it is for people to tell you what courage should look like when it's not their skin on the line. Sunny didn't flinch. She tilted her head, her eyes locked on his. And it's funny, she replied, how often courage disappears when the cameras start rolling. The words landed like a slap disguised as a compliment. A murmur spread through the crowd again. Quieter this time, but sharper, like the sound of something cracking beneath the surface. Brad's jaw tightened, a muscle flickering in his cheek. He didn't answer right away. For a moment, the only sound was the soft hum of the studio lights and the faint rustle of someone shifting in the front row. Then he smiled again, but it wasn't the charming kind. It was the kind people give when they have decided they're done pretending. You really don't hold back, do you? He said quietly. Sunny leaned back just a little, still smiling. Why would I? She said. The truth doesn't need padding. Sunny didn't give him time to breathe. Her tone sharpened just enough to slice through the tension. You keep talking about action, she said, voice steady, eyes fixed on him, but no one sees it. You choose silence and call it balance. Is that what fairness looks like to you? The air thickened instantly. The audience shifted, sensing the hit before Brad even spoke. His expression stayed composed, but there was a strain in his voice now, a low weight under each word. What do you want me to do, Sunny? He asked quietly, leaning forward just enough for the microphones to catch the edge in his tone. You want me to stand on this table and scream the lines you've already written for me? The crowd murmured, a mix of shock and fascination. Sunny didn't blink. She tilted her head, her voice almost gentle, but her words sharp enough to cut. I don't write scripts, Brad, she said softly, but you seem pretty comfortable performing in them. The reaction was instant. A collective gasp rippled through the studio, followed by a few nervous laughs. Whoopi's eyebrows shot up and Joy looked away, fidgeting with her pen. Brad's lips pressed together, his jaw tightening as he exhaled slowly through his nose. He wasn't smiling anymore. The charm had drained out of his face, replaced by something colder, offended maybe, or just tired of being polite. He leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. You know, he said, his voice measured but heavy with warning, people love to turn every conversation into a performance. But the truth is, not everything needs an audience. Sunny's smile faded, replaced by a steady, unreadable calm. Except when the audience is the reason you're here, she replied. The line hit like a punch masked as truth. Somewhere in the crowd, someone whispered, damn, and a hush followed right after. Brad stared at her, unblinking. It wasn't rage. It was that quiet, simmering kind of anger that builds when someone's pride is cornered. The tension had stopped rising. It was already boiling. Every camera, every eye in the studio was locked on them. For a moment, even the air felt like it was waiting for one of them to break first. Brad let out a short, humorless laugh, the kind that didn't match the warmth of the lights or the applause sign blinking above him. I came here to talk about the art, he said, his tone flat but cold. Not to get a moral lecture. The words hit like a slammed door. The polite charm he'd worn at the start of the show was gone. What replaced it was a controlled burn, irritation barely held in check. Sunny didn't flinch. Her posture stayed calm, her voice steady. That's the thing, Brad, she said, her tone softer but cutting. You're selling dreams, but you're scared to face the reality behind them. The audience let out a small collective gasp. Brad's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing with something raw. Offense, anger, maybe both. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, his voice dropping low, deliberate, every word a pointed strike. I've lived in reality, he said slowly. I just don't need anyone else painting it for me. A few seconds of silence followed, thick, uncomfortable, stretching too long to be ignored. Sunny didn't look away. Her gaze stayed locked on him, her tone now almost whisper soft, but the kind that cuts deeper because of it. Or maybe, she said, you're just afraid to see yourself in it. That line hit the room like thunder. Someone in the crowd actually said, "Oh my God," loud enough for the microphones to pick it up. Joy's mouth dropped open slightly. Whoopi's eyes widened. The tension in the studio wasn't just in the air anymore. It was vibrating through every seat, every breath. Brad's hands clenched together on the table, the muscles in his forearms tightening. He didn't speak right away, but the look in his eyes said everything. He was done playing nice. The camera zoomed in, catching the moment his smile disappeared completely. "Careful," he said finally, voice low and sharp. "You might not like what you see when people start looking back." The crowd reacted with a mix of gasps and low murmurs, unsure whether to be impressed or nervous. Sunny's eyes flickered, but she didn't back down. "Maybe that's the point," she replied, voice calm but icy. The air felt electric now, like a fuse had been lit and no one could stop it. What had started as a TV interview had turned into a public duel, live, unfiltered, and impossible to look away from. Brad's hand came down hard on the table. Not a slam, but sharp enough that every microphone caught it. The sound sliced through the silence. His eyes were cold now, stripped of the polite veneer he'd worn at the start. "I'm tired," he said, his voice low and tight. "Tired of having to prove I'm good enough, right enough, on the right side of whatever line people draw this week." The crowd froze. You could almost hear the camera zooming in, the tension thick enough to taste. Sunny didn't blink. Her voice was calm, but every word carried a sting. "Maybe that's because you've never had to fight just to be heard," she said, her tone light but laced with ice. "Some people don't get to choose silence, Brad. It chooses them." Brad leaned forward, his stare sharp. "And you think you're the only one who knows what it means to fight?" he said, his voice suddenly louder. "I've been fighting my whole life, just not the way you can film and post online. I don't need to broadcast every bruise to make it real." The audience erupted. Some gasped, others laughed nervously, a few even whistled. It wasn't the sound of approval or disapproval. It was pure shock. Sunny tilted her head, unfazed, her mouth curling into a faint, dangerous smile. "Sometimes people film it," she said, her words calm but cutting, "so the world doesn't forget they're still alive." That one hit differently. Brad didn't respond right away. His jaw flexed, his fingers drummed once on the table, then stopped. He looked at her, eyes dark, voice barely above a whisper, but hard as steel. "Maybe I don't need anyone to remind me I'm alive." The room went silent. No one clapped, no one breathed too loudly. The audience sat frozen, caught between awe and discomfort. Even Sunny seemed to pause for a split second, reading the weight behind his words. Brad's tone had shifted, no longer defensive, no longer angry. It was the sound of someone who'd reached their limit, who'd stopped caring about being liked or understood. The lights felt hotter. The applause sign blinked uselessly above them, ignored. For a moment, it didn't feel like television anymore. It felt like something raw, human, and painfully real. Two people locked in a war neither of them had meant to start, but both too proud to end. No one spoke. The silence was heavy, stretched so tight it felt like it could snap at any second. Even the hum of the lights seemed to fade away. Brad's eyes moved across the table, then to the audience, then back to Sunny. A dry, bitter laugh escaped him. "I came here to talk about a movie," he said, voice calm but shaking at the edges. "Didn't realize I'd wandered into a courtroom." The audience didn't move. Cameras zoomed in closer. Sunny met his stare head-on, her tone unshaken. "This isn't a courtroom, Brad," she said, steady and clear. "This is real life. No scripts, no retakes." Her words hit like the crack of a whip, clean, final. Brad's jaw clenched, and for the first time the anger wasn't masked. It was right there in his eyes, sharp and alive. "Real life," he repeated, leaning forward, his voice low but burning. "So real life to you means forcing people to apologize for the world's sins? Is that it?" The sound of the camera gears tightening filled the silence. Someone in the audience stood instinctively, as if afraid to miss what was about to happen. Brad's chair creaked under him. Sunny didn't answer. She just watched him, unflinching, like she knew this was the breaking point. Brad pushed back his chair. The scraping sound was harsh, echoing through the studio like thunder. He stood, adjusting his jacket with a quick, sharp tug. "I think I've had enough," he said quietly. But his words carried across the room. The audience gasped. A few phones shot up, recording. Sunny's gaze followed him, steady but wordless. Joy half rose from her seat, her hand hovering as if she might say something, but stopped herself. The cameras caught everything. The empty chair, the stunned faces, the sharp echo of footsteps fading into the wings. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the applause sign blinked uselessly overhead, but the audience didn't clap. The only sound left was the echo of the chair's scrape, like a closing door that wouldn't open again. Brad was already halfway to the edge of the stage when a voice called out, "Brad, wait!" It was Joy, half pleading, half stunned, but he didn't turn around. The studio lights glared against his back as he pushed through the curtain, disappearing into the dark beyond. The audience erupted into whispers and the scattered sound of phones being raised. 100 tiny screens lit up, capturing the moment his chair sat empty under the blinding lights. The cameras stayed tight on that empty seat. The hosts were frozen for a second, unsure what to do. Sunny's gaze lingered there, her face calm but her eyes heavier than before. She exhaled slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sometimes," she said, "the quietest ones are the ones with the most to say." Her words floated in the air, fragile but sharp, echoing just enough for everyone to hear. No one replied. Whoopi finally made a small motion with her hand, an unspoken cue. "Cut it," she murmured to the crew. The red camera lights dimmed. The applause sign blinked, but no one clapped. The noise died out completely, replaced by the faint hum of the lights and the distant sound of footsteps backstage. Then slowly the screen faded to black. For a few seconds there was nothing. No music, no chatter, just silence. Then the narrator's voice came in, low and steady, carrying the weight of what had just unfolded. "In a world where everyone demands an answer," the voice said, "sometimes silence is the loudest scream." The final image lingered, an empty chair under a single spotlight, before the screen faded out completely, leaving the audience with nothing but the echo of what had just been said and what hadn't. If you were holding your breath through that moment, you're not alone. What do you think? Was Brad right to walk away? Or did Sunny ask the question everyone was afraid to? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story that makes Hollywood tremble. Because sometimes the most powerful drama isn't in the movies.